Every map has its place and its quirks that make it iconic and easily recognizable. The active duty pool is the most refined selection of maps for the highest level of competitive play. It's arguable if this statement is true, I know, but what makes a map able to qualify for one of the 7 spots? Balance, easy to learn, fun to play and watch, recognizable layout? All of these things are true, more or less. I do think aspects that differentiate between each other are important. They all might have similarities while not being the same, except for one map, which despite having achieved everything, seems to be the least interesting of them all, and that is Ancient. As of 2025, it's one of the most played maps in the professional scene, has maintained a stable queue in-game and still remains in the active duty pool. Mission accomplished! This is what we wanted, right? Brand new maps everyone likes to keep the game fresh. Despite that, it feels empty, like there's no excitement for it at all. I swear, for every map that is and isn't in the game, there will be fans ready to scream at the top of their lungs, but Ancient feels weirdly different. You could say it hasn't matured enough, but honestly, I've seen more fanfare for the much newer Anubis. Something isn't right, and it has always bothered me, so let's expand on everything by going back to the ancient times for some timeline exploration. Ancient was introduced in 2020 along with Operation Broken Fang. What was supposedly conceived as a sequel to Aztec turned out to be more of a spiritual successor, kind of. I love Aztec, it's everyone's favorite nostalgia map, but seriously, we all know it's not fit for 5v5. A total one-sided mess when it was there. Valve knew too, which is why only the jungle moss and bricks remain. Everything else is completely new, and the community's reaction wasn't the best initially. It wasn't immediately put in the competitive pool, but instead the separate scrimmage or unranked pool, which used to be the testing area for new 5v5 maps, but ultimately I think less people cared to try anything this way. Anywho, everyone hopped on to play Ancient once and then never again. Is it deserved? Kind of, yeah. At least mappers rejoice at the boatload of new assets to play around with. The first version is not horribly different, but let's just say it's less optimized. So let's focus on that. The CT tunnels on A are not here, and neither are the corner boxes. This makes a big difference as it limits the ways of approach, creating a very T-sided sight. The hole is closed, so you can't flash out, but there are other ways. I guess on the bright side, no safe spots to plant if we consider there are no active smoke walls. A site is way smaller with the pillar providing less cover, and the wooden wall corner is more of an OP cubby. Moving along with tunnel, the connectors are in a zigzag. Why? I always found this little excavation site cute, but unnecessary. Finally, mid is pretty much the same. Short is obstructed by boxes in a zigzag. Why? I know there are smaller things, but let's go along with the evolution. The next 2 years were the most important for how much it changed. Bomb sites were made bigger for one, simplified paths that obviously should have been like this from the beginning. A few tight paths have been widened a bit, while some other corners have been rounded out. Opened up places while introducing some much needed safe space elsewhere. I'd say A site has gone through the most, and while it retains the general idea, it's much better to deal with than before. For 2023, besides more graphical stability stuff, map was added to deathmatch and casual, then later competitive, replacing Anubis. Once CS2 came around, nothing really changed in terms of layout, just the brightness has been increased dramatically everywhere. Not just the natural lighting, but a few projectors and some candles inside the structures. I believe this was a significant contributor to its popularity because before, the most common complaint wasn't so much that it was an awful map, more so the visibility wasn't good. But now I think 100% of its potential has been unlocked. Oh, well actually, I guess we just never noticed these crates are new around CT spawn removing a corner. I do kinda miss how green it used to be, but the lighter gray on the bricks is more suitable. Plus, check out these crazy new water effects. Alright, after all that, seems like everything is fine and dandy. Yet, I'm left feeling there's something missing. For starters, I was excited to see a brand new map, especially sporting a look reminiscent of somebody we used to know. In the end, what we got is basically a Dust 2. So much about its core design makes me feel like I've been here before. A single B tunnel entry with the other one involving a push from mid, a mid peak from the right instead of left, that instead of going down goes up, short path leading to A sites. You get the point. I'm not claiming it's a complete clone, but the similarities contribute. Okay, but isn't Mirage also like Dust 2? Yes, but Mirage has lots of verticality and quirks. Ancient is mostly flat and very predictable because there aren't many many options. This is what sort of bothers me about its gameplay. The design is sterile, to the point the map lacks character. Dust 2 has the instant midsection, Nuke has verticality, Inferno has banana, Train has long range angles, but for the life of me, I can't really think of anything that truly stands out about Ancient, besides, I guess, maybe, I don't know, the B boost spot and the A wallbangs. I don't hate it at all, just seems like a missed opportunity. My theory is that CS devs initially really wanted to remake Aztec, but figured out too late into the process that's impossible, only to then cobble together whatever they could figure out on a whim instead of scrapping the project. So we got a map that simply follows what has been proven to be successful with no real identity of its own. Do you want to play around this square, this other square, pillar, or box? How about sitting in one of the multiple corners? The few off angles and positions you can take are not really worth attempting, besides that B boost or maybe this head peek here. I'm certain there are actually fans of Ancient, but they seem very few and quiet. As established, it wasn't liked immediately, but only ended up going through some sterilization to become what it is. I was waiting to see what happens in the long run, and now at this point, it's not really gonna evolve further. If we look at the pro scene, seems like they all like it. I haven't heard from anyone any complaints of Ancient being so bad it must be replaced immediately. The worst criticism I've seen is it's a Dust 2 ass snooze fest, and that's exactly my sentiment too, but we cannot discredit its popularity. Now, if I'm such a high-Q intellectual that understands the intricacies of level design who can cohesively judge by spiritual merit, do I have a solution? My uneducated belief is it needs more flavor instead of unseasoned piece of chicken breast plate with unseasoned white rice served in a very fancy plate. Throw in some more weird geometry to play around in, more off-angle positions, add a bit of verticality, I don't know. The aesthetic is one of my favorites, but remains underutilized for anything. Now, I don't expect fauna to be placed everywhere and players hiding in bushes like an actual jungle, but it needs something. Another question is, why doesn't Valve do more interesting maps? Well, this led me to a realization. The new diffuse maps we've seen made exclusively by Valve since Global Offensive are only Overpass, Canals, and Ancient. If we count the revival of Vertigo, this makes 3 out of these 4 experimental in layout, and out of these 3, only Overpass has sort of maintained competitive relevancy. I'm sorry, Vertigo, the world always treated you wrongly. I like that they are trying to make more weird things that deviate from an established standard, but after so many failed attempts, it's not as surprising their latest creation is a generic 3-lane map and it hit big. But that's just my game theory on it. All in all, I find Ancient to be the most bizarre instance of a popular, highly competitive map that doesn't really have much to be remembered about, excluding aesthetic. There's truly nothing else like it, and you know, maybe to a degree, that in of itself is the actual quirk. However, what isn't quirky are the clogged drainage pipes I'm trying to fix. You know how much baking soda I've been through at this point? It's becoming a bit ridiculous.